Today I'll show you how to create this modern Glassmorphism register form. If you want to use the exact same background, feel free to just copy this background code right here. First of all, we need to go into our HTML file and create a form inside of our body. And inside of this form, we can, for example, say that we want to have an h2 that could, for example, say register here, for example. Now let's target our form inside of CSS and say our form should have a padding of 40 pixels, for example. We want to have a border of 1 pixel solid white. And now we have this effect. Let's go with 60 pixels, for example. Let's say we want to have a border radius of 15 pixels, so we have round borders. And now we can use the Glassmorphism effect by using a background that is basically white, that has RGBA of 0, 0, 0, 0.1 and is black, but we need to use white, so we're going to use 255 instead of 0 for R, G, and B, and now we have this effect basically already. Now what we can also do is we create a filter that says we want to have a blur of 10 pixels, for example. But to really add this blur, we need to use, instead of filter, we need to use backdrop filter. And as you can see, now we have it behind our card. Now let's also start to style our form by using form h2. We want to have a color of white. We want to have a font size of maybe 40 pixels. So now we have this effect already. Let's say we want to have a font family for everything of maybe Roboto. And in order to do so, we are going to go to Google Fonts and we are going to get the Roboto font by clicking on the page. We're creating get font, get embed code. We're using those links. We're going to copy and paste them into our HTML file. We'll copy this font family right here that says Roboto. We're going to save the file. We'll add this to our body as well. And now we have font family of Roboto. So now we have this one. And we somehow got the story, which we obviously don't want. So now we have this register form. Instead of register here, we can just say register, for example. So now we need some input fields. And in order to do so, first of all, we are going to give our form field a certain width of maybe 500 pixels, like so. We say text align of center. Oops, text minus align center. So now we have it centered, and now we're going to add the input field. So now we'll add an input of type email, for example, and we say this email ID is email and placeholder is email, for example. Next up, we're going to add an input field for our username that has the type of text. This name is username, ID is username, placeholder is username. And now we do the same for our password. So input of type password, name is password, ID is password, and placeholder is obviously also password, like so. Now we also need a submit button, so we can use button of type submit, for example. We say this is register right here, and maybe we also want to have a text that says already have an account question mark, and if you have an account you can just go ahead and go to our login form, like so. So now we'll first of all put those ones into a div, and this should work. So now we'll target all of our input fields inside of our form field, and we'll give them a width of 100%. By doing so, we say we want to have padding top bottom of maybe 10 pixels and 20 pixels to the left right. Or let's just use 20 pixels for all of those directions. Let's maybe say 15, like so. Now we say our border is basically 1 pixel solid and white. We want to have a border radius of maybe 5 pixels. For our form, we are going to use a display of flex, a flex direction of column, and a gap of 5 pixels to get a gap between our items. So this already looks a lot better. Now for our inputs, we also say we want to have a background. And now let's say again RGBA 0, 255, 255, 255, and 0.1 once again. We can also go for 0.2, for example, so it doesn't really matter. Maybe I'm going to remove the border as well because I don't really think it fits here. But instead, we're going to say we want to have border of 0, and we also want to have a box shadow, for example, of, let's say, 5 pixels X direction, 3 pixels Y direction, 10 pixels blur, and we are going to use RGBA of 0, 0, 0, and 0.1. So some form of black. So we get this effect. And maybe I'm going to increase the gap to 10 pixels. Now we obviously also want to target our placeholder. So we're going to go to form input : placeholder, and we say we want to have a color of white. And now we are just going to decrease the opacity slightly for those placeholders to maybe 0.6, like so. And as you can see, if we write in, it still looks pretty terrible. So what we have to do in order to get rid of this, we also need to give our input fields an outline of none and a color of white, because we want to have white text right here. And as you can see, now we have white text. And maybe I'm going to use 12 pixels instead of 10 pixels, so this looks a little bit better. Now we can start to style our button by using form button, for example. Again, we are going to use a width of 100%. We use a padding of maybe just 15 pixels, a border of 0, a border radius of 5 pixels again. Let's use a font minus size of 20 pixels, or let's say we want to have 16 pixels. We can obviously also use a background of RGBA 255, 255, 255, 0.2, for example. So now we would have this bottom. We could use a color of white, like so, a cursor of pointer, and now we have this bottom. So now let's also start to target our container. Let's just give this one a class of container, and we're going to target .container. We give it a display of flex. We say justify content center, gap maybe 5 pixels to get a little gap. And now we are also going to use a color of white for our text. And we obviously also need to target our href specifically. And we can, for example, give it a class of white and bold and underline none. And we don't have those classes yet, but we are going to create them in a second. And we say, okay, we want to have .white. .white will have color of white. We will have .bold. .bold will have a font weight of bold, and underline none will have text decoration of none. And now we save this and we have this effect as well. Now we could, for example, add some margin by using or by creating the class mt-4, for example, and giving this one a margin top of 40 pixels. And now we give mt4 maybe to our first input field, for example. So we say mt-4. So now we have a margin here. And now this might be a little bit too much, so we're going with 30, and now we have this effect, for example. But maybe we are going to remove text decoration none or underline none right here. And now we have this underlined login button. And this is what the finished result basically looks like.